Hi there, and welcome to The Daily Gardener, an almanac of garden history, literature, and small botanical joys. I'm Jennifer Ebling, and today is January 26. January has a way of making everything feel more honest. The garden isn't performing, it's resting. This is the month of silhouettes, hedges reduced to outline, paths only faintly visible beneath the snow, branches writing their thin handwriting against the sky. And it's a fitting day for stories like that, of people and gardens shaped by patience, beauty made to endure, and the quiet satisfaction of bringing something living safely home. Here's today's garden history. It was on this day in 1864 that Alister Clark was born in Brighton, Victoria, and Australia would grow to know him as one of its most influential rose breeders. Alister's story begins with land and with loss. His father, Walter Clark, built a place called Glenara, a homestead with gardens set high above Deep Creek near the township of Bulla. It was the kind of property that seemed to say, "This will last." But Alister's mother died when he was just 1 year old, and in 1873, when Alister was 9 years old, his father was violently killed. Alister, still young, was sent away, back to Scotland, raised by relatives, separated from the country that would later become the center of his life. He followed the expected path: Cambridge, a law degree, a formal education meant to steady him. But when Alister married a wealthy New Zealand heiress, he returned to Australia and bought Glenara back from his father's estate. The place became not just an ancestral property, but a devotion. Alister lived the life of a gentleman of his era. He was a huntsman, a polo player, a racehorse owner, a golfer, a photographer. But his most consuming passion was roses. He maintained a 10-hectare garden, once described as, quote, "a place of great charm and beauty," a phrase that somehow understates the seriousness of his work as a rosarian. A newspaper described Glenara in 1928 as an old-world garden with spreading lawns and sheltering trees, and roses gradually taking over the orchard, encroaching on the grapes and vegetables, as though beauty once established refuses to be contained. At first, Alister ordered roses from England, but imported roses often fail to meet expectations once climate and growing conditions have their say. So Alister began to breed them. He wanted roses that could live honestly in Australian conditions: hot, dry summers, mild winters, drought that doesn't negotiate. The key to his work was Rosa gigantea, vigorous, heat-tolerant, resilient. His first great success was Jessie Clark, the rose named for his niece. And then came others, names that still feel like people passing through a garden gate: Lorraine Lee, Nancy Hayward, Sunny South, Black Boy, Squatter's Dream. Alister didn't breed roses as trophies. He bred them to be companions. And that idea, roses as companions, not prizes, will return before we're done today. Alister's roses were meant to climb, to ramble, to flower continuously, and to hold their own. Alister released many of his roses for philanthropic purposes, passing them on to societies and organizations for propagation and sale, as if the point of a new rose wasn't ownership, but circulation. After his death in 1949, many of Alister's roses were lost. It happens so easily. Labels fade or break. Gardens change hands. Names slip away. But decades later, people went looking, and some of Alister's roses were found again. Today, near Bulla, the Alister Clark Memorial Rose Garden holds the surviving collection, maintained by volunteers. A life's work still blooming because of one man's devotion to creating living beauty that could endure. And it was on this day in 1883 that J. Henry Chesterton died, not in a garden, but on a riverbank in Colombia. Henry began as a valet, traveling through South America, an unlikely beginning for a plant collector. But gardens have always made room for unlikely beginnings. And somewhere along his journey, Henry fell hard for orchids. Not a mild appreciation, but a hunger. After building an impressive collection, he wrote to Sir Harry Veitch in England with one urgent question: how do you pack living plants for a long voyage by sea? Help was arranged. Months later, Henry Chesterton arrived unannounced at the Chelsea nursery gates, carrying orchids so carefully tended they survived the journey. And the Veitch nursery bought the entire collection. And Henry was sent back to South America, not as a valet, but as a plant hunter. His task was to find the scarlet odontoglossum, an orchid known in rumor and frustration, oftenly found, but rarely delivered alive. Henry succeeded, and the plant flowered in Chelsea in 1873. It's hard to imagine that moment now. A flower long whispered about, opening at last under glass, thousands of miles from where it grew. But plant hunting carried a cost. Henry Chesterton died in 1883, still a young man, after leaving his hotel sickbed too soon, believing he'd recovered enough to travel. His obituary called him reckless. But sometimes reckless simply means unwilling to turn back from something you love. And Henry loved hunting orchids. In today's Unearthed Words, we hear an excerpt from the landscape architect Eloise, born on this day in 1905. Speaking of the great private estates she helped design and what it took to keep them alive, Eloise once remarked, "We would estimate the need for at least 8 full-time gardeners for most of our estates." 8 gardeners, a number that sounds almost mythic now. Later, Eloise warned against choosing what looks easy: lawns, shortcuts, simplicity, without understanding what landscapes truly demand. It's a very January kind of wisdom: less romance, more structure, and a bare-bones respect for the invisible labor behind beauty. It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Take Chelsea Home, Practical Inspiration from the RHS Chelsea Flower Show by Chris Young. This is the rare Chelsea book that doesn't just admire the spectacle, it translates it. Paths, proportion, planting combinations, structure. Chris selects some of the most influential show gardens and uses them as benchmarks for us, not for imitation, but for practical inspiration in gardens both big and small. In late January, when you're planning more than you're planting, this is the kind of book that turns Chelsea, often called the catwalk of garden design, into a garden you can actually make for yourself. And finally, here's something sweet to ignite the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day in 1945 that the famed cellist Jacqueline du Pré was born. Her talent was immense, and illness ended her performing far too early. But there is a rose named Jacqueline du Pré in her honor. It has soft white blooms, brushed with blush, a strong fragrance, flowers that open simply, revealing bright stamens like a note held high in the air. Jacqueline's namesake rose doesn't replace what was lost. It simply gives us a living way to remember, something that blooms, fades, returns, and for a moment makes the air sweeter without asking for applause. And perhaps that's something the Rosarian Alister Clark understood too, that the best roses aren't meant to impress from a distance, but to stay with us, to add cheer, to help us remember something or someone, and to endure in outline. And sometimes most unexpectedly, and sometimes most profoundly, that's when we see it most clearly. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day.